Chapter 3. The Weight of Distraction. Doug Weapon wasn't avoiding the bookstore. At least, that's what he told himself as he stood in the garage, staring at the half-disassembled engine of his old project car. His toolbox sat open, wrenches and sockets lined up in the order he'd left them weeks ago. He had planned to tackle this today. He had told himself last night that today, finally, he'd get back to it. Instead, his eyes kept drifting to the workbench, where the silent gods and the forgotten ages rested, taunting him. Doug sighed and turned back to the engine. He picked up a wrench, tested the bolt on the manifold. Too tight. He should loosen it. His fingers adjusted their grip, but his mind wasn't in it. Bahamas. A 12,000-year-old structure under the sea. He shook his head and tried again. Focus. The wrench slipped. Damn it, he muttered, rubbing his fingers. Frustrated, he set the tool down with more force than necessary and wiped his hands on his jeans. Maybe this wasn't the right project to start with. Maybe he needed something simpler, something productive. The fence. Yeah. He could patch up that sagging section in the backyard. That would clear his head. Doug grabbed a hammer and some nails, stepping outside into the cool spring air. The sun was high now, casting long shadows from the trees along the back of his property. He approached the damaged section of fence, where the wood had warped and pulled away from the post. Easy fix. A few nails, a few swings of the hammer, and he'd have it back in place. He lined up the first nail. Miranda. Doug let out a slow breath, lowering the hammer. Why was this so hard? It wasn't like he was some teenager with a crush. He was a grown man, damn it. He could just walk into the bookstore and hand her the book. He didn't have to make it a big deal. So why did it feel like a big deal? Doug set the hammer down. He wasn't going to get anything done like this. Maybe he needed a break. He went back inside, making another cup of coffee. As he stood by the counter, waiting for the drip to finish, his gaze once again landed on the silent gods and the forgotten ages. He hadn't even read it yet. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe if he just took some time to dig into it, he'd get whatever this was out of his system. He picked up the book, running his fingers over the cracked leather cover. He flipped it open, skimming the first few pages. The text was dense, archaic, half history, half mythology. A lot of it sounded like the kind of thing he'd seen in conspiracy forums, lost civilizations, ancient cataclysms, forgotten knowledge. One passage stood out. And so, the gods turned their faces from the world, and in their absence, the waters rose. The sky burned. The age of man was washed clean, and only whispers remained. Doug frowned, rereading it. The Bahamas, the younger Dryas, the missing history of the world. His grip tightened on the book. Yeah, he wasn't going to get anything done today, and maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop avoiding the bookstore.